What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Average Bob, and welcome to the 2023 NFL Draft Preview, where we'll break down a couple key options for the Giants' upcoming draft and who I think we should be taking. The Giants coming up in this draft do have 10 total picks and 3 in the top 100. Round 1, pick number 25. Round 2, pick 57, and round 3, pick 89. I'm not going to go into as much detail kind of as I did in last year's draft preview, where we had 2 top 10 picks, and you could be a lot more sort of accurate for your recommendations and who you think the Giants are going to be drafting in those particular slots. Whereas like 25, we've been there in the past, right? Where like sometimes you get out of those top 10, top 20, and it's like hopefully like a guy that you've seen before or heard their name could fall to us. But I think with our draft coming up this year, what I've read around the league is that there aren't really too many like explosive, game-changing guys, right? Like a lot of GMs and front office people didn't have many guys ranked in their first round grades per se. So with that, I want to dive into things and kind of touch on, first off, our team needs, right? When we look at what happened last year with the Giants, where they faltered was in a couple key areas. Wide receiver is a major one, which has already been addressed in a number of different ways. But if we can get a kind of game-breaking wide receiver in this draft, I am completely open for it. It does seem like a couple of guys are going to be going off the board pretty early on or in that middle sort of tier. So we'll see who we get at the bottom of the first round there. But from a center perspective, I do want to touch on a couple of guys there because I found one guy just based on the way he looks, I already love him. And he's 6'6", 317 pounds. So he's an absolute hoss in a position that we have had some major uncertainty in over the last number of years. And that's something that needs to be figured out at some point. I don't think the Giants have the proper people or personnel on the team right now to figure that out. So it's got to come, I think, within the draft. And this could be a good opportunity to address that. And our third position that I do want to touch on is the secondary, specifically at the cornerback position, as the Giants have had a lot of issues there, especially last year when guys got hurt and went down. Adoree Jackson has been great back there. When we put him in as a punt returner, then he gets hurt, and you're kind of down to bare bones. And you're asking a lot from other guys to step up, like Darnay Holmes and Cordell Flott and some others. But I do want to touch on a couple of guys whose names I've been seen floated around a lot in mock drafts. Let's get started. I am going to get started at my favorite position on the offensive line, and who's arguably one of the most important guys in the offense, right, is the center, because they're touching the ball every play. The Giants right now, looking like who they have slotted in to potentially start at center, would be Ben Bredeson and J.C. Hassanur. Brederson's, I've seen enough of him to know that I don't want to see him moving forward. So this is a great opportunity at the 25th pick to bring in someone else to take that role. And 2 names that are on the list for that are John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota, who is a center listed at 6'3" and 301 pounds. Minnesota, right? They've have some hard-nosed coaching. They've been specifically good at running the ball the last number of years. So if we could bring in someone who's a good run blocking center, then that's great, right? Because we have Saquon and anyone that could do a little bit better job from what we've seen in the last couple of years between like Feliciano and others to be named like Halapo, those guys couldn't really do a good job of getting the job done. So I would love a fresh start with someone along the lines who's been in sort of a rushing offense. And obviously there's an adjustment, right? When you're blocking guys in college and, you're not even in one of the key conferences, how is that changing to the NFL? But another guy from the Midwest who could be another good fit at center would be center Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. I absolutely love what I've seen from this guy so far. He is 6'6", 317 pounds, so an absolute hoss at center. Like, usually you don't see centers being that sort of tall because from a leverage perspective, right, they could get kind of pushed around a little bit. But this guy, Joe Tippmann, seems like an absolute stud. And based on his picture that you could see here, he has amazing hair with the mullet and everything. So I already love him. If some wide receivers aren't there, let's invest in center and see if we can make this guy work, because he looks like he has an element of swag that, you can't buy. Moving over to the defensive side for a couple names that I saw floated there. around the cornerback position would be DJ Turner. This was based on Mel Kiper's first round mock draft, who's a cornerback out of Michigan. And what Kiper said, right, is Turner isn't necessarily too big at 5'11 and 178 pounds, but he is fast. He did run a 4.26 40, which is obviously super important at the cornerback position. And he played outside on, X and Z wide receivers as well as the slot. So anywhere where we could try and add someone that can play to that ability, because right now it looks like, someone, it would be great to bring in a corner that could challenge Cordell Flott and Aaron Robinson across from Adoree Jackson. Adoree Jackson played great. He had the stupid injury on the punt return, but that's fine. We'll leave him in there, slotted in there. But I would love to see someone else kind of pull into that role where they did try and plug that, a number of times where guys that we've drafted way higher than the 25th pick. When you think about Eli Apple and DeAndre Baker, absolute flops and guys that were super young, which, we were pretty hyped about at the time, and they just never worked out. So, why not try and take someone on the flyer at the end of the first round and see if they can make it work? I mean, really hasn't been a very strong position since James Bradbury was let go during free agency. Adding someone like DJ Turner could be really good in the mix. Another name that also has come up along with DJ Turner is Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State, playing SEC talent week in and week out. So if the Giants like him a lot and think that he'd be a good fit, I'm open to bringing on another cornerback who could potentially be a first-round talent that can shut down, the good wide receivers that we have to play against week in and week out. I'm jumping back to the offensive side of the ball. A couple of names that I've seen spoken about from a wide receiver talent position. There's some of the main ones, right? Like Quentin Johnston. Another one who seems to be in our range could be Jordan Addison out of USC, who looks extremely talented. One that I just saw from Matt Miller's mock draft would be taking Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. I believe he won the Blitnikoff Award last year for the top wide receiver in college football. So it would be great. He runs a 4.3 40. And I think, at the wide receiver position, we were so limited there from a competitive standpoint, right? When we look at the potential depth chart right now, based on who we have Isaiah Hodgins, Paris Campbell competing with Darius Slayton, and then your Wan'Dale Robinson, who tore his ACL, who knows exactly when he'll come back. Jamison Crowder was someone that they signed later on. A couple guys coming back off injury like Wan'Dale and Colin Johnson, but I think wide receiver is a major spot where we should look to bring someone in for an upgrade, right? And if the Giants believe that Jalen Hyatt is it, he had a great year last year in college, catching 67 passes for 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. Averaging 18.9 yards per catch. I know it's a high flying offense in college, but could you imagine if anyone came close to averaging or even sniffing 18 yards a catch? I mean, I think the Giants have been so used to throwing the ball short that if we could get someone, who's fast, could get downfield and who's kind of a bigger target that can make plays, then, that's absolutely a no-brainer, because it was just such a bad position for us last year, and it can't happen again. And then another name that's been coming up as, all of those other guys have really come off the board from the main wide receiver guys is Zay Flowers out of Boston College. Not necessarily a big Zay Flowers fan. He's 5'9", 182 pounds. We already have two of those guys with Wan'Dale Robinson and Jamison Crowder. So I think I don't really like Zay Flowers. I don't really like anyone from a skilled position from Boston College. There was a period of time where they were able to, have good offensive linemen come out of BC. But, outside of that, you really haven't seen two strong BC players outside of guys, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, right? When you had guys like when we drafted Kiwanuka at the end of the first round or after the Super Bowl season, or was that the beginning of the second? Either way, he was good, but we never really had a position for him, right? Because we had Tuck, we had OC, we had all these other guys on the D-line, so he was kind of in limbo in a 4-3 playing outside linebacker and then rotated in at the end. But we did have Chris Snee from BC who was good. And then, there were some other studs like, Luke Kuechly and some other folks. But I think at the skill position, you don't tend to see guys come from BC, and that's for a good reason. So I would like to see if we do take a wide receiver, someone a little bit bigger that is a complement to everything else we're doing, not just three of the same guys. Because if you have Zay Flowers, Jamison Crowder, and Wan'Dale Robinson running around out on the field, it's like representing the Lollipop Guild. So, you know, what are they all going to do if they're all doing this a drag across the middle? So. Another thing that I wanted to address too, as this has been coming up a lot, as the Giants, Saquon didn't report to the offseason program alongside Dexter Lawrence as well. I guess I'll get started talking about Dexter Lawrence. I think it seems like now is the time to pay him, even though he's not due for a contract. But based on how well he played last year, you have to strike when the iron's hot. And I totally understand where Dexter Lawrence is coming from. He's the captain. He's young. I think now is the time that you pay someone like that and continue to watch them build. I don't think Dexter Lawrence has hit his cap yet for how his potential of how good of a player he could be. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, and I'm certainly not going to compare him to Aaron Donald, who's one of the best defensive tackles maybe of all time. But I think he is a tier below that based on what we saw all season. He was a game-changing 0-1 tech that was just blowing up offensive centers and guards and, commanded double teams. And that's something the Giants haven't had in quite some time. Whatever they can come to from a deal perspective, a guy like Dexter Lawrence, who is a homegrown guy, he's a great kid, he's a great leader, and I only think he's going to get better. Now's the time you pay someone like that. On the flip side of things, you have Saquon, who also did not show up. But I think the thing to keep in mind with Saquon was, he still is on that sort of franchise tag where he can negotiate, but it doesn't seem like they're really that open. The Giants are open to negotiating because they have them on that tag. And then I think his agents kind of did him wrong a little bit by trying to price him out a little bit too high when you look at the running back position and what people are getting paid. It's not a position anymore, that commands massive contracts, right? I think most teams that do make someone the highest paid running back in the league do tend to regret it, or they move on from those guys. For even the last couple of years, just looking at recent running backs, right? Like McCaffrey had $17 million guaranteed. Well, the Panthers traded him. You look at other guys, like I remember, 5 or 6 years ago, right? Like was it during the Super Bowl? You had Todd Gurley, who signed a pretty big contract and then was traded and gone. He fell off. Very recent one is Dalvin Cook, who you're hearing some rumors about him and the Vikings kind of parting ways with him probably before the draft because he is guaranteed $28 million. But when you look at some of those other guys like Kamara, I thought he was going to get traded. I remember there's rumors last year about Kamara going to the Eagles. So it's like, and Kamara is at $12.7 million and $34.3 million guaranteed. So you're seeing a lot of these guys that sign these monster running back contracts and they're like kind of on the move. They're always being shopped. It doesn't always necessarily, work out. So I think what the Giants do, they do want to keep Saquon. They do want to make it work, but the position in the open market doesn't command paying for it, right? And that's unfortunately where Saquon is, and I think he's going to have to accept that. I don't know. It's kind of rough for me to say as someone just talking about this, but or he's got to figure out, maybe getting new agents, right, and seeing what they can do, because I think his agents are trying to play a hardball game in an uphill battle that I don't think is winnable for them. But having said that, I am not too concerned, and it doesn't seem like Joe Shane is concerned at all as well, or even Dable, just based on Jordan Renon's tweet the other day. Jordan had asked Brian Dable about managing an unhappy player like Saquon in his contract and its effects on the locker room, where Brian Dable, he's the best, man. He gave a great answer. He goes, it's April 17th. And then he added, at some time, we'll find itself working out, And I think that's what we have to keep in mind as Giants fans. This, is sort of a media play to sort of, get some discontent, get stories driven up, right? Like, I always remember, and I remember being a kid in high school, right? When before the Giants won the Super Bowl, or maybe that was college, but, leading up to that season in 2007, Michael Strahan sat out all of training camp. And I was devastated. I was with the media. I was like, how can Michael Strahan do this to the Giants? Don't we want to win games? And of course, like a guy like Michael Strahan doesn't need to go to training camp. He's done it at that point probably like 13 times already. So who cares? And I think, a lot of that is overblown. I think the Giants front office will do and find a way to make this work with Dexter Lawrence and Saquon. So like my man, Brian Dable, like coach, I am not worried about it. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I know I didn't add a lot more videos like I did, which was my, I think, second video on this channel. Last year, I did a more in-depth draft preview, which was fun because we did have 2 top 10 picks, but it's even more fun winning football games and not having those top 10 picks, even though it is exciting when you do have some top guys in the draft to talk about. But anyway, let me know what you guys think we should be drafting. I'm really all in on center, wide receiver, or cornerback. Those are all positions that we need. So I'm cool with whatever we really do there, where the Giants do deem a guy to be a great fit, whether it's in the locker room and also more importantly on the field. Interested to see what happens there. Looking forward to the draft. It's always such a fun day. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, who you want to see drafted, and have a great week coming up.